property proper, and the second is the Sewell Recreation property. And our first approach was to see about ways that we could combine those two to create a win-win situation for both. And I'm going to describe that in just a minute. The second parcel, or the second area under consideration currently is the Pine Manor campus, a portion of it, which we'll get into more detail in just a moment. So to move to the Baldwin-Sewell, this is the approach which has received the most attention and which has received the most detail, including a feasibility study level design for a school of about 143,000 square feet. That school would accommodate K through 8 in 3 portions, following very closely the educational vision of Superintendent Pott and others in the district for a 3-part K through 8 school with a lower school, elementary school, and a middle school. This building would also incorporate improvements, or actually a replacement gymnasium, which spans over the property line separating the Baldwin from the Sewell. A new gymnasium which would replace the current existing gym, along with many other improvements to the Sewell Recreation Center, including an enlarged and improved soccer field, many different landscape improvements to the pathways and landscaping of the Sewell, and also a shared parking lot, which is actually very desperately needed by Sewell in order to accommodate the load of activity which is occurring there, especially this time of year on weekends. The concept was that this parking lot, with its 104 spaces, could be shared in a complementary way with the school, so that faculty at the school could park here during the school day, and then on weekends it would be available for the use of the Sewell Recreation Center. One of the most important parts of all the work that was done this fall around this alternative was the traffic study. The level of detail was quite remarkable for the traffic study, both external to the site in terms of understanding the far-reaching implications of the selection of this area for traffic as far away as almost to the Baker School, but also internally to understand circulation within the parking lot, how bus drop-off would work, providing the right amount of parent queuing, how the parent queuing would work during the day, and so on. So that's the Baldwin/school proposal that we know the most about, which included the feasibility study phase last fall. Oh, actually, in the early spring, wasn't it? Very conclusion. Subsequent to that, I was asked by the town to look at, with the advent of the news that a portion of the school property proper might not be available for the building footprint, but of course would still remain available for the recreational use of the students. What would a school look like on just the northern half of that site if it weren't possible to combine with the Sewell Recreation Center or use the southern portion of the district, district's own land for the building footprint? And the result is a workable building. It doesn't have the advantages that the previous project had, that it would fit entirely within the existing zoning requirements for that site. It is also less advantageous in terms of transportation. As many of us who were involved in that remember, a lot of the deliberation about transportation had to do with serving the site from Woodland Road, and also dealing with the traffic, the current traffic at Heath and Hammond, which actually we were able to find certain ways of ameliorating by changing the timing of that light. In any event, this site would have to be accessed closer to Heath Hammond, and it would also require all the traffic to make a left turn from Woodland to get there, which was less desirable than immediate access from Woodland. It's a 1.4 acre site. The building would end up being quite tall, but given the topography, that it's 5 stories, a portion of it which would be buried into the site, so that only 3 stories would be visible from Heath Street. Circulation entrance would be from the north, and it would circulate, the parent drop-off would circulate counterclockwise through the subgrade garage level and would exit out onto Oak Street through there would be an enlargement there due to the fact that the school can enlarge that street with 2 lanes going out and 1 lane coming in to serve the existing residences. That brings us to the Pine Manor site, which is the most recently considered alternative. This is a map showing the extent of the Pine Manor campus, the approximate extent of it, to our ability to understand looking at land records. At the top is Heath Street. Here's Woodland Street, Hammond Street on the left. We were just talking about the Sewell and the Baldwin immediately to the west. So this portion that's shown in lavender is the existing Pine Manor campus, to the best that we understand it. In addition, these ochre portions or green portions are land that was formerly owned, which we felt was important to show as well. At the top of the page, you'll also notice that there are several parcels which are being outlined, which have already been subdivided by Pine Manor for possible future sale, and also a darkened area which represents the 7.2 acre parcel that we have determined would be sufficient to accommodate a new K through 8, 143,000 square foot school. So what follows here is an example, what we call a test fit, of how a new school that would satisfy in the same way that our feasibility study approach satisfied the town's educational program. The advantage here is that this building would be 3 stories in height, only 2 of which, because of topography, would be visible from, only 2 of which would be visible from Heath Street because the site falls off almost a full story. The limitations of this site that we had to take advantage of, and also that we did quite a bit of extensive research into, include the zoning requirements. This, like the Baldwin Sewell site, would fall entirely within the town's zoning requirements for this single-family district in terms of height, intensity of use, yard setbacks, which we're showing here, parking setbacks, but notably, there is a pond on the site which represents a wetland feature, and it has buffer zones which extend back from it, which limit the location of where a building could be. Of course, how wonderful it would be to have a school with a water feature in its view shed. As long as we could keep the children safe, that would be certainly a marvelous attribute for a school site. What we're showing here is a building of sufficient size. 56,000 square feet is the footprint, but at 3 stories, taking into account the double volume spaces within it. This is roughly the footprint that we would, in a very early conceptual, tentative way, imagine that a school might take. The parking would be underneath so that it wouldn't be visible to the neighborhood, and that also helps us minimize the footprint on the site. Entrance and egress would be from Heath Street primarily. Queuing would occur by entering from Heath Street, extending around a loop from the back of the building, and then coming back around the front where the entrance would be. This would also provide access to the underground parking. There would also be a direct parking garage access from Woodland for the use of the faculty. At the bottom of the page, you see existing structures at Pine Manor, gymnasium and the administration building. The proposed parcel respects the existing entrance road to the campus, maintains a 10-foot setback from the edge of that road in order to provide the opportunity for landscape screening, which may be necessary. The site plan also includes a play field of similar size to many around town, but keep in mind also that this approach maximizes the availability of the adjacent Sewell Recreation Center for possible student use. Because this is such would be such an important commitment on the part of the town, we wanted to also be able to demonstrate that we wouldn't be locked into just one approach to making a building there. So we also studied a variety of other footprints and site configuration approaches in order to demonstrate the flexibility of the site. All of these address our firm's commitment to sustainability by providing the proper orientation to the sun for daylight harvesting and for life cycle cost minimization. I'm not going to describe these in detail. There's just a variety of approaches, some that that bring the core spaces onto the west of the site, which don't need that kind of solar orientation. Others which break the building volumes up into north-south spanning volumes. And then a third one that reflects the tripartite division of the program that Superintendent Bod has proposed as the basic framework for the new school. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Neil. That concludes my description of the preliminary thoughts about East Street options.
Thank you, Mr. Levy. Now I'll give an opportunity to Mr. O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chairman Wojcinski, and thank you to the committee members, joint committee members. Not sure where to start, because I have to tell you, it's incredibly shocking to see that picture and so cavalierly displayed. I'll take your front yard, and I'm going to plop a whole monstrosity structure right there. And I'm not going to talk to you about it. I'm not going to ask whether it affects you. I'm just going to do it. That's pretty shocking. Let me read something to you if I can. Pine Manor College, Heath Street, a private four-year liberal arts college located on 45-plus acres in South Brookline. The existing use is meeting a public need. The town administrator has met with the president and representatives of the board about their long-term vision for the school. The existing owner-operators are committed to current use, and at the time, eminent domain would be hostile. That's what was written a year ago in what's called the Moxie Report. The Pine Manor College is still operating that location. What I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about that neighborhood, because Pine Manor College has a few hundred residents in Brookline. Yes, they're residents of Brookline. Pine Manor College is the second most diverse college in the United States, according to U.S. News and World Report. 85% of our students are students of color. 84% of our students are first in their families to attend college. 80% are low income. 50% are multilingual. That's our neighborhood. That's Brookline, Massachusetts. And yet nobody's asked them how they feel about it. Can you imagine if somebody knocked on your door, or didn't bother, and said, I want to take your front yard because I have a better use than I think you can put it to? That's really shocking. Let me tell you a few more things about Pine Manor College. The students who go there are graduating at 3 times the national average for their demographic. We ended 2016 calendar year with 100% of them either getting full-time jobs or going to graduate school within 6 months of graduation. I expect we'll come really close to that number this year as well. That's an incredible outcome. Somebody's saying that that doesn't matter. Somebody's saying that putting that program at risk doesn't matter. When I think about these residents of Brookline, your neighbors, who, as you heard, make payments in lieu of taxes, who open up the campus to dog walkers, to all kinds of community programs, to partnerships with all kinds of community groups, a place where the town has always been welcome to have its meetings, to do its trainings. We've said, come, share our space. And now the town is saying, we're going to take your space. That's not a good feeling. It doesn't feel like Brookline to me, but it's what's happening. I met with 2 students yesterday. One of the beauties of my job is I get to meet with these incredible young people who come from really amazing backgrounds and are making their way in life. One was from Brockton, Mass. One was from the Bronx. I asked them why they liked Pine Manor College. They said roughly the same thing. We love the faculty. We love the staff. They push us to do better. They give us hope. They believe in us. They give us a reason to thrive. And they give us a little tough love every now and again. Dr. Bear in the biology lab was singled out. Biology is our largest major. She's tough as nails during class, but after class, she helps me. I said, what else do you like about Pine Manor College? A student from the Bronx said, we don't have places like Pine Manor College in the Bronx. We don't have trees and forests that are like this. I can't see the bunnies running around at night the way I can at Pine Manor College. I like to lie down in the field and see the stars. You can't see the stars in the Bronx. These young people are working hard, most of them about 30 hours a week, all along the Chestnut Hill Mall area. We give them shuttle buses to get them there. They're borrowing money, and they're getting scholarships. And they're patching together a way to get through that school because they know that when they graduate from that school, they're 3 times better chance than if they go somewhere else. This college is doing something very important in this monstrous project that has been callously thrown in front of them. Puts it at risk. Most people will tell you that no place that works is just a combination of assets. It's not just buildings and grounds. It's how the whole thing comes together. And that's what this is all about. Brookline has a challenge. And the question is, how will you solve it? Will you solve it on the back of one of the weakest players in the community? Or will you find another way? I was invited in to help transform Pine Manor College, to bring it to a new level. We've achieved financial solidification. Our numbers are good. Graduation rate is up. And we're shooting for it to be even higher. We've had financial issues. We sold land. You saw the picture. We sold land. We are at risk. Those lots were approved in 2005, something like that, 2005, 2006. The college was in desperate straits. It's not there anymore. We are out of the real estate business and in the education business. We're going to keep doing it for young people like this. This project is highly disruptive. It poses great risk. Good neighbors think about each other. Good neighbors respect each other. Good neighbors know who needs a hand and who doesn't. Just because the town can do it doesn't make it right. Might does not make right. I know you have a tough job. I've served on a school committee. My wife serves on a school committee. We are active in our community. We know what it takes to make things work. I'd say think outside the box. I'd say don't be confined by geography. I'd say don't be confined by style of structure. I'd say think through what else there is to do. Because this is a community for everyone who lives in this town, not just for some. And the community that you're putting at risk is probably one of the ones that can least take it. I'd ask you to take Pine Manor College off the table for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. This is the beginning of a conversation, and we'll be reconvening on the 16th of October. Thank you.